All right. Okay, so we are going to interrupt our regularly scheduled exoplanet programming to bring you children's books now. So my name is Christina Soontornvat, and I am a children's book author, and I write picture books and novels. And my first novel was published in the fall of this year. It's called The Changelings. I wrote it for 8 to 12-year-olds, and as you can probably guess, it's a fantasy story. So when Keely first invited me to speak tonight, I thought, I don't know, like these are science people. These are usually science talks. I don't know if what I have to say is going to be relevant for them. And then I started digging into the data, and I thought, maybe there's some crossover here, right? So you know who you are. So tonight, I'm going to talk about something that we all have in common with each other, something probably other than enjoying fantasy books, okay? So I love fantasy stories, though, and I always have. And these are the sorts of books that I read when I was a kid. These were my very favorite ones when I was growing up. The first time that I ever heard what a changeling was, I was about 10 years old. And up until that point, I thought that all fairies were like this. And they were sweet little winged creatures that flew around from flower to flower singing nice songs. And then I read an Irish folktale that said, oh no, fairies are not like that at all. And if you have a baby, you better watch that baby. Because if you don't, the fairies will sneak into your house and they will snatch up that baby and they will switch it with one of their own. And that changeling will look like your baby, and it will smell like your baby, but it won't be your baby. And I thought, that is exactly the kind of fairy tale that I can get into. So I love that story. I love all sorts of fairy tales, and even though I loved stories and making up my own stories and telling them, people ask me, did you always know you wanted to be an author? And the answer is no. I never thought that I would end up being a published author. I looked at the people who wrote the books that I love to read, and I thought that it was this natural talent that they had that I just didn't have. So, maybe I had read this Hemingway quote or something. This is like the greatest quote. It's the most anti-inspirational quote you'll ever find, right? You shouldn't write if you can't write. And I thought I couldn't write, so I didn't. And I had always gravitated towards math and science. So when I went off to college, I majored in mechanical engineering, and I worked in the field for a couple years before I found my real passion was in education. So for the past 10 years, I've been working in what we call informal science education, and that's science learning outside of the classroom. So I've worked in nature centers and museums. Here in Austin, I've worked at the Austin Children's Museum, and it's now the Thinkery. And I'm now a consultant, and I work for people like iFly, indoor skydiving, and trying to get kids really excited about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and get them to pursue careers in those fields. So back when I was working at the Austin Children's Museum, I took a trip to visit my nieces and met them for the first time. And like all aunties, I fell in love right away, right? And one of the first things that I thought about when I met them was that changeling myth. Because I thought, if I was a fairy, I would totally be stealing these babies. They were so cute. And that meeting was the first time that I came up with the idea for my story. And it's about a girl whose little sister gets kidnapped by the fairies, and she has to team up with this team of changeling kids to rescue her and bring her back. So as my nieces got older, I started to tell them that story. And because they lived far away, I would write it down in letters. So I would write about 8 to 10 pages of this tale, and I would send it to them in the mail. And I would do that every couple weeks. And what I didn't realize at the time was I was writing the chapters of this book, right? So after about a year of doing this, of sending them letter after letter, and the story ended, and I thought, maybe I have something here. I think I might have written a book. And so I printed it all out and read it from beginning to end. And I thought, wow, this really sucks. This is so bad. So when I go out and, now I go out and I talk to students, I go to classrooms and I do author visits, and this is how I explain it to them. Have you ever thought, I'm going to draw something and I'm going to draw a dragon and it's going to be like the most awesome dragon there ever was, and you go to draw it and it comes out like this? And the kids are like, yes, I totally feel you. They really understand that. And that's exactly what it was like when I read my book for the first time. It was not polished. It was not professional. It was nothing like those books that I had loved as a child. And it was very discouraging. And I probably would have given up if I hadn't met some other children's book authors. And they taught me that all of those books that you see in the bookstore, almost every single one, started out as a really terrible first draft. And the only reason that it got into the store was because the writer was willing to go back and revise until they got it right. And when I heard that, I was like, that is so familiar to me, right? That is very similar to what engineers do. So in the same way that engineers test out their ideas and redesign them until they get them right, writers write and revise until they get it right. And so that's what I did. I revised The Changelings many, many, many times before it's sold to a publisher. And this is actually a very truncated version of my path to publication, so that the actual one would have lots more layers of revision and rejection. But I think you get the point that, making a book takes a lot of persistence and takes a lot of perseverance. And at this point in my talk with students, I like to say, how long do you think it took me to get from that point when I first came up with the ideas for the story to right now when the book is out? And they're like, 1 year, 3 years. And some kids like 4 months. And I'm like, go sit outside. You don't come back till you think about that. That's totally unrealistic. No, I'm just kidding. And then I show them these pictures and I say, when I first met my nieces, they were 3 and 1, and now here they are at 11 and 13. And the kids are like, 10 years? But I'm 10. And I'm like, I know. This endeavor has taken the span of your entire life, okay? So, what am I talking about next? Okay, yes. So going out and talking to those kids, I joke about that, but it is really the greatest privilege of being a published author is getting to talk to kids and going into their classrooms. And I have met the most amazing students you can imagine. But I want to tell you about one in particular. So I met her a couple months ago when I went down to the Rio Grande Valley for a school visit. And just like I've been telling you, I tell the kids all about being an engineer, and I talk about being an author and how the two are not mutually exclusive. And then I open it up at the end to questions. And this one girl, she is a 6th grader. She didn't have a question. She's just burning to tell me something. And she said, when I grow up, I want to be a writer and I want to be a scientist, and I love math and I love science, and I have stories I want to tell, and I want to travel, I want to go everywhere, and I want to do everything. And she was so brimming with enthusiasm for all of these things she's going to do. And she was so inspiring to me. She made a huge impression on me. Especially because I know how important it is for a 6th grade girl to be saying those sorts of things about herself. So you are all probably aware that we are losing too many students to the sciences all the time, and that we lose more, from the sciences, you know what I mean. And we lose more of certain groups than we do others, right? So for girls, they drop out of the STEM pipeline at every stage, at every age. By 8th grade, we've lost 50%. So half of those who said they were interested in science in the 8th grade, they don't say that anymore. And they don't think that science is relevant for them or relevant to their lives. If we follow them into college, women have made tremendous gains over the years in the sciences, but they continue to be underrepresented in STEM fields, and in certain fields more than others. And physics is one of those fields, right? The same is true for certain minorities. So African Americans, Latinos, Native Americans are vastly underrepresented in STEM, vastly underrepresented, and this is just physics, right? And the literally billion-dollar question is why? Well, there are many, many factors, and a lot of them are tangled up together, but this is one thing that we know, that for all of the emphasis on testing and test scores and grades and what students learn, those are not the most important factors. So I told you that we all have something in common, right? So this is what it is. We are all storytellers. So everyone in this room is a storyteller. You are telling stories all the time, even if you don't know it. And the most important story that you will tell is the one you tell yourself about yourself. And that's your identity. And it has a tremendous impact on everything you do and who you will become. And identity and interest, which is closely connected, are so important that in the 8th grade, whether or not a person says they are interested in science is a better predictor of if they will go on to pursue those careers than their grades in math and science, right? So, what impacts identity? Well, this is Google search for the word scientist, a Google image search if you search scientist on the left here. So for a long time, the world has been telling a story about what science is and who does it and what it looks like. And for too long, it left out too many people, right? So if you ask students to draw a picture of what they think a scientist looks like, even the students of color, even the girls, draw pictures overwhelmingly of white males in white lab coats with crazy hair, right? So, who in here is a scientist and goes to work in a white lab coat, right? Raise your hand. Nobody? Crazy hair, maybe, yes, but not the white lab coat, right? And this is not just a problem in the sciences. So in children's literature, we talk about books being both mirrors and windows. So windows into worlds and characters that are different from yourself, mirrors in which you can see yourself and your story reflected. And for minorities, they are not being reflected in the books that are supposed to be written for them. And this is especially troubling when you think about that in 2020, minority children will be the majority. So in 4 more years, the majority of children in America will be minorities, right? These images that children see, these messages that they receive, whether explicit or implicit, all of that filters through. It all feeds that narrative, right? That story that you tell yourself. It's the answer to those questions. Who is allowed to do this work? Who belongs in this space? And whose story is worthy of being told? Okay. So what do we do about it? Well, when it comes to books, there's actually something easy that absolutely everybody can do and everybody should do. And that's to make sure that the children in your lives have access to books that are both mirrors and windows. So, this is all kids, no matter what they're like, need to read books about all sorts of people. All children benefit from reading diverse books. Our indie bookstore here in town, Book People in Austin, has a section they call the Modern First Library. So this is cultivated, diverse titles that if you're going in looking for a birthday present or a baby shower gift, you don't always have to get the Very Hungry Caterpillar, right? So this is something that everyone could do. But all of you in this room, have something special that you can do, actually. So as science people, you have a special power more than anybody else to rewrite that narrative that the world has been telling about what science is. Okay, so here are just some examples of things that you can do through mentorship, through messaging, through being a role model. So your department, UT Astronomy, has this Taurus Scholars Program. It's specifically designed to give underrepresented minorities field experiences in astronomy. So You can support the program. You could volunteer in the program. If you are working under a National Science Foundation grant, NSF requires that all projects use some portion of that funding to achieve a broader impact, right? So you can partner with the many organizations in our community who are specifically, their mission is to do this. No matter who you are, even if you're not a practicing scientist, you can talk to children, and there are many avenues for you to work with children and to share your passion for science. So, there's a few that are here on campus in Austin, but there are so many all around the community. And when you go, you will not, I'll tell you what you won't do, okay? So I'll tell you about an engineering event I was at one time, and there are, hundreds and hundreds of kids, dozens of activities, scientists and engineers at tables doing activities with kids. And I am watching this one engineer, and he's working with this small child, and I hear him say, so if you're really good at math and science, and when the problem comes up, you're the first one to solve it, you might be a good engineer. And I'm like, no, you just gave him the equivalent of the Hemingway quote, right? Like, no. So, do you know the one STEM field that has the least problem recruiting minorities and females? It's medicine, right? Medicine. So, what is the tagline for medicine? If you go to any kid and you ask them, what does a doctor do? What will they say? They say, doctors help make people feel better, right? So that's the tagline for medicine. The equivalent one for engineering is, if you want to solve problems to help make people's lives better, you would be a great engineer. And the tagline for science is, if you are curious, you love to ask questions, you would make a great scientist, right? So no matter whatever you do, don't be a Hemingway, okay? I promise you, this is the only talk you're ever going to go to where the takeaway is don't be an Ernest Hemingway. So, your stories matter so much. You have wonderful power to help young people tell the most important stories of their lives. And I thank you for letting me come in and tell my story. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Christina. So we have some time for questions. Do you have any questions for Christina?
You can also ask me about exoplanets.
In the back there.
The Changelings will have a sequel, and it'll come out next year. So I actually just got the letter from my editor today to revise that one. So back to more revision.
In the plaid?
Can you describe the experience of the first time you failed your physical book?
Oh my gosh, that was a crazy moment. Yeah, they arrived on my door, a big box of them, and it's so weird. Actually, publishing is so strange. The timeline is so pushed back. It's so late. So my book sold over 2 years before it actually came out. And so by the time your book comes out, it's super exciting, but you have also moved on to writing the next thing. And so you are moved on to being rejected about the next thing. So it's this crazy pendulum swing of very excited to very dejected and devastated. All the time being devastated.
Right here?
When you were writing the book, did you do any research into mythology as far as changes goes? And what are some new things you learned when you did that?
I did research it a little bit. I have to say that most of everything came from my imagination. But I did go back and research some of the Celtic folktales about changelings. I guess I was most surprised to learn that people actually really did believe that. And there's actually a lot of really sad stories about children who are different, who were said to be changelings. So, that's what they would say about kids who were different back then, was that, that's not my kid. The fairies took my kid and left me this kid, right? So some really kind of crazy, creepy tales that are in there.
Right down in front.
What happened to the other kids that weren't the changes?
Oh, that got taken into fairy? Oh, what happened to the other kids? You got to read the book. That's what the book's all about.
Right here.
So we know girls make great scientists. So when you're approached by a girl who runs up against the status quo, what is your advice to young girls to get past that?
Oh, what's my advice to girls to get past? Well, I guess if they're already interested in science, I just tell them about myself. I tell them about all of the many things that I do, not just science, that all of the fun things that I do. I talk to them about working with other girls, meeting friends, that the best friends that I have been the ones that I've met through working in the sciences. I just try to give them as many positive messages that go against that stereotype of the solitary person in a lab coat in a lab, right?
You in the back right there.
Yeah. Okay, so that there's the chicken and the egg problem, that there's not enough representation in the sciences to go back and change that, right? To change the young people. Well, I think that we have to tackle it at every single level. So from the very beginning, from the earliest ages, we have to show students what they can achieve and make sure that they're receiving these more positive messages, more inclusive messages. But we also have to look, at every stage that people are dropping out of science at every single stage. So, we have to look at university departments and what policies can be there to make sure that underrepresented folks are staying in the sciences, because if we don't have them, then these younger people aren't going to have those mentors and those role models that they need to encourage them to stay.
Okay, great. Well, let's thank Christina again.